Hello guys, Jay here from greentargetaccounting.com. Today, we will discuss the third part of our Easy QBO Bookkeeping Series. Previously, we have discussed banking and its challenges. We now know that you can add expenses from the bank feeds. But how do we create expenses inside QuickBooks Online? How do we create bills and apply payments? How do we create vendors' checks or vendor credits? But before we tackle these items, please hit subscribe and like button to support our channel. And now we are back with part 3, expenses, bills, and vendor items, QuickBooks Online. Right now, we will discuss and illustrate what do we do with the expense section. In the last video, we discussed all about banking, and now we will go to the next part. For the bookkeeping for every business, you will use a lot this section, which is expenses. If we click here on the navigation pane on the left side, go to expenses, and then you will see here all your expenses for your business, and you can sort by type, you can sort by date, you can sort by pay, and you can quickly see if the categories are correctly done based on the pay. That's why it's very important to put the pay when you are categorizing transactions, because it's easier to review when your transactions are grouped by the pay. So, for example, change gas and oil, automobile and fuel. And if you see maintenance and repair, that's different from the rest. You need to verify if is this really maintenance repair. For example, you have Road Warrior Body Shop that looks like maintenance and repair. So all properties, that's fine. Hicks Hardware, you have job materials, landscaping, service, job materials. For me, what makes more sense here is sort by pay, so you can easily see if something has been categorized incorrectly. If you want to sort by bills, you can do so by clicking here and then show all the bills. But if you really want to look at the bills, you can just click here on the next tab, which is especially dedicated for managing bills. You have your unpaid bills here and then paid ones for the last 12 months, and you can pay your bills. So if you have QuickBooks Bill Pay and your QuickBooks Online account, you can easily pay your bills from here, then schedule payment. Obviously, we cannot do it here because it's a sample company. But if you have QuickBooks Bill Pay for your QuickBooks Online, you can pay from this window. Click this button. You can also add a bill here. So what we will discuss today are the transactions that you can do in this section of QuickBooks Online, all about expenses, bills, and vendor items. So what is an expense? It is said that an expense is a cost that a company incurs to generate revenue. Common expenses include payments to suppliers, employee wages, factory leases, and equipment depreciation. From the definition, we can understand that an expense is a business expense. So your personal expenses should not be included here. The expenses section lists down the transactions that you incur to generate your income revenue. So if you want to create an expense, you can do it from here. New transaction, creating expense, and then you can also do it from here. New, and then click expense. And the third one, you can also make an expense by going to vendor section and then select the vendor that you want to add a new expense. For example, Books by Beshi, and click new transaction and click expense from here. You can also add an expense from a bank account or a credit card register. That is part of the banking section, so let's not do it from here. So for example, we create an expense. Click an expense here, and then this is the payee, this is the payment account, you use to pay the expense, and you incur the expense on June 5. If we select the MasterCard here, then you can use the payment method here as MasterCard. And then select the category, so Books by Beshi is bookkeeping. Let's see if there's a bookkeeping category. You can put the description for the expense. For example, this is bookkeeping for the month of June 2025, then 100. Copy the description to the memo section. If Books by Bessie send an invoice to you, you can attach the invoice here. Save and book. So when you pay your Books by Beshi bookkeeping, you can record it as an expense. If they send you a bill and there's a terms of payment, then the more appropriate document for you to use is bills. So what is bills? A bill is a document representing a business obligation to pay for goods or services received from a vendor where payment is scheduled for a later date. So it just means that your vendors send you an invoice with the terms of payment. It's not immediately payable, so you record it as a bill. Just click New Transaction, then click Bill, then you attach the invoice here, and then the terms of payment, for example, it's payable within 10 days, and the bill number is BB-105. Put here, bookkeeping for June 2025. And that's 100. And then you attach your invoice received from Books by Beshi. Then save. And that's how you create a bill in QuickBooks Online. What's the difference between an expense and a bill? An expense is something that you pay immediately, and then a bill is also an expense, but it's payable within a term period, within 15 days or 10 days. And so you record the bill and then schedule the payment. So how do you record the payment for the bill? When you pay the bill, for example, this one, click Mark as paid. Then we paid this yesterday, then paid it by credit card. Just select the bill here. If you have multiple bills, you need to select correctly which bill you are paying. Because QuickBooks Online can sometimes apply payments to the wrong bills, and that's not good. So you need to select the correct bill you are paying if you have multiple bills. Click the bill and then apply the amount of payment. Make sure there's no amount to credit here. If you have a reference number for your payment, for example, you have a wire transaction number, you can put it here. If not, just put a description. And then for June 2025, save and close. And now the open balance for Books by Beshi is 0 and the bill is paid. So this bill payment, this is the one that you will match to the bank feeds on the MasterCard account because you paid it via the MasterCard. So we are done with expenses, bills, and bill payments. So what are vendors? Vendors is a very good concept in QuickBooks Online because it helps you organize your expenses and your payments. Very important to get your vendor management clean and tidy, and you have the correct names of vendors. So one of the common mistakes is not putting the vendor names when you are creating your expenses or checks. And then another mistake is putting the wrong vendor names. So for example, if you got from the bank feeds something looks like a vendor name but it's not really the vendor name, you add it as the payee, then you get a wrong vendor name. This vendor management section. Example, instead of Brosnahan Insurance Agency, you just put insurance agency, and that's not very specific, so don't do that. So next are contractors. Contractors are also vendors, but they have a special category here. Contractors refer to an individual or entity that provides goods or services to our business on a project-based or fee-for-service basis. So one of the common thing that we need for contractors, that's why we separate it from the regular vendors, is when you pay something that is above $600 in a year for a contractor, then you need to file 1099 for them. You need to ask from W9 from the contractor and then prepare 1099 at the end of the year. So contractors are not employees and are typically reported on the Form 1099 NEC and 1099 MSIC miscellaneous. Okay, so in QuickBooks Online, a contractor refers to an independent worker from the business space, for example, freelancers, consultants, or vendors that qualify for contractor purposes. So what are the key things aside from $600 payments in a year to qualify for a contractor? The 1099 contractor is applicable for U.S. business entities and U.S. individuals. So if you are not from the US, then you are not qualified to be a 1099 contractor. So what are the characteristics? They are not on payroll, so they are not employee, paid by expense or check, can receive Form 1099 based in the US and over $600 in a year. And then in QuickBooks Online, you need to track it under 1099. So how do we do that? For example, you want to track Books by Beshi as contractor. So click edit from here, then go find track payments for 1099. The track payments for 1099 should also input their business tax ID in this box. So you can get the information for this box from Form W9. Since we have labeled Books by Beshi as contractor, is track for 1099, they appear here on contractor section. So all the vendors that we did not label track for 1099 will just appear here and then they're not here. So we have two. This one, we already have W9 ready. And books by Beshi, obviously we don't have because we just mark it right now as 1099. So the next section is for mileage. We seldom use mileage. Usually small businesses, you can use mileage and it refers to the distance traveled using a company or personal vehicle for business purposes. It's a feature that allows you to track and record the business mileage. Can be claimed as tax deduction if you do not want to deduct the actual vehicle expenses. So, for example, it's troublesome to track all the expenses for your vehicle. So instead of submitting all the receipts for the payments for your vehicle, then you just use mileage and track the distance that you travel, and then it will compute how much you can charge as an expense, and that is deductible from your taxable income. So last in this tab for expenses, we have 1099 filing. So at the end of the year, you are required to file 1099 for your contractors. And QuickBooks Online is so nice. They have frequently asked questions here and you can read them and understand better what is 1099. Can I print and mail my filing instead of e-filing? They give you reliable answers here. What 1099 forms can I file with QuickBooks? QuickBooks Online supports 1099 NEC and 1099 miscellaneous filings. 1099 NEC or non-employee compensation is more common form. So if you're filing 10 or more 1099s in WDOS this year, the IRS requires you to e-file. So you cannot print and mail your filing. What info you will need to prepare for 1099? You will need the Form W9 filled up by your vendors. So how do you send copies? The form to your recipients? You can send it by online. You can also send it by print and mail. If you want to go paperless, you will need to receive express written consent from your recipients. You can read more from here. Do I need to file with my state as well as the IRS? So as we said, if you are an overseas freelancer or a non-US person or business, you do not need to fill out Form W9. And you are also not gonna be part of the 1099 contractors. Instead, you will be asked to fill out Form W8BEN or W8BEN-E for entities. That means you're not a US person and you're not subject to the 1099 tax filing. It says filing requirements vary from state to state. We have put together a handy chart for your reference. So it's always best to check your state agency's website so you can see if they have more or less requirements. What if I made a mistake on a filed form? You must file a correction for 1099 the same way you filed the original form. For example, if you have filed your 1099s, you must also e-file your corrected 1099. So for businesses that are not on time and you cannot file by the IRS deadline, you will need to request an extension with the IRS. It says that you need to submit Form 8809. It can be done online through the fire system for 30-day extension. So you can learn it from here on IRS website. We will not tackle this into detail. At the end of the year, you may need the help of your tax accountant to understand better the terms here and how to file properly the forms for your contractors. If you have filed 1099 with QuickBooks Online, you can view your filings. When you click here on taxes section, you can also look at 1099 filing. Since this is a sample company file, we did not do 1099 filing, so we do not see one here, but you can prepare 1099s right from the taxes section or by going to expense tab and then click 1099 filing. They look the same. And if you click prepare 1099, fast track your 1099 with autofill forms. So what's good here when you track your 1099 contractors in QuickBooks Online? QuickBooks Online will automatically pull the details of your vendors and the transactions involved with their 1099 filing. Let's watch some video for that.
Hi, this is Jason from the QuickBooks team. QuickBooks can create their 1099, send them to your contract, and e-file them with the IRS. Let's go over how QuickBooks prepares and pre-selects vendors and payments for 1099. Then you'll see how to review everything, make any necessary changes, and e-file 1099. Note that 1099s are due to contractors by January 31st. For filing due dates and guidelines, visit IRS.gov.
So you can watch more from this video and have more guidance on how to file your 1099 inside QuickBooks Online. They also have their pricing here. You may find that you can compare the pricing from here versus other services. And what are other transactions that you can do in the expense vendor management tab? If you click Books by Beshi again, we can create purchase order. If you are an e-commerce business, Or even if you're not an e-commerce business, for example, buy something from Computers by Jenny, then you click purchase order in QuickBooks Online and send it to the vendor that you are buying the items. So right now we don't have the feature for purchase order because it's a sample company file, but in your own QuickBooks Online you can do purchase order. Aside from purchase order, you can also create a vendor credit. And a vendor credit is when you have overpaid a vendor or when the vendor gives you a credit and then you can record a vendor credit. This can reduce your next bill payment because you can apply it against their bill. For example, books by Beshi, let's get bookkeeping here and then let's put vendor credit of $10. Let's say that we have a new bill from them. Let's copy this one, make this BB-106, save and close. And then when we apply payment, you can apply the vendor credit against this bill. And so we only need to pay 90 because 100 is being reduced by $10 from the vendor credit that we have received from them. So let's apply this payment. And now the bill of $100 is paid via MasterCard of $90 and a vendor credit of $10. And what is a check? So when you issue a check, a physical check, you can do it also in QuickBooks Online. So click new transaction and then check, and kinds of looks like just an expense, but you can put your check number here. For example, the check number is 2551, and then you put the category as bookkeeper, and you put this as keeping for July 2025, so you pay them in advance. So use the checking account because you can only issue a check from checking account or savings account. We do not issue a check from a credit card. That's why the credit card is not appearing here. Save and close. Another clarification for a check. Usually you use your checking account. That's why you can use it to issue check. Some specialized savings account, you can also issue a check from them, but usually they are checking account. And that's it for part 3, expenses, bills, and vendor items. If you have questions or topics you want to get discussed in our next videos, just let us know in the comments. And again, thank you very much for watching our videos. If you find them helpful, hit like and subscribe to support our channel.